Okay, we're live.
Welcome, everyone. This is the April the 5th meeting of the Planning Commission of the City of Bowling Green. We're glad you could make it tonight. We even diverted the expected storm so you could get in here without getting wet tonight. Jamie, you want to call the roll?
Yes.
Here, yes.
Here.
Yes.
Here.
Here.
Here. Okay, next we go to approving the minutes from our March 1st meeting. Those were passed out in advance. They're rather short, really, because we had a pretty short meeting. Are there any corrections or additions or deletions to those minutes?
Mm.
Hearing none, they are approved as they were passed out to us. Next, we move on to lobby visitation. This is an opportunity for anyone in the audience to speak to us about anything other than items that are on tonight's agenda for a public hearing. So essentially, if you want to talk to us about the zoning request, that will.
Please wait until next Wednesday.
That will happen in the public hearing in a few minutes. This is if anyone wishes to speak to us about any other topic. Is there anyone out there that wishes to address us? Okay, I'll close the lobby visitation and we'll get to the gist of tonight's meeting. We've got a public hearing for the rezoning request for the 36.89 acres located at the southwest corner of Newton Road and Brim Road, identified as parcel numbers B08 510 1301010001500 and B08 510 1301010001502 from M3 Business Park zoning classification to R2 single family residential zoning classification. Katie Thompson on behalf of the Bowling Green Community Development Corporation is the applicant. First, we go to the staff report. Heather?
Yes,
Tell us about
absolutely.
that.
Yes. Well, it is a long one as usual. I like to cover all our details, so I will just highlight some of the main objectives of the report. So I did give you an aerial map of the property, and on the screen, I do have the adjoining property classifications for zoning. I know it's hard to read, but it was in your packet, so you can see that. It's a total acreage of 36.89. Again, it's zoned M3 Business Park, and the request is to be R2 single family. Katie Thompson, on behalf of the Bowling Green Community Development Foundation, the property owner, she is actually the executive director on their behalf, has applied for that. All the procedure requirements for the hearing have been met. If you drove by there, you saw that the signs were posted, it was advertised in the newspaper, and then a letter was mailed to all the adjoining property owners. I gave you a copy of the existing zoning classification and the permitted and conditional uses. And then I gave you a copy of the proposed zoning, which of course is single family, so it allows single family dwelling units. I compared the M3 to the R2, so obviously the biggest difference would be the uses being residential compared to industrial. As far as proposed use, according to the application that was part of your packet, the property owner has been working to attract housing developers to the city to address the housing shortage. A regional developer is interested in the building for 150 home subdivision, likely in several phases. I also, speaking of that, gave you a copy of a letter that we received by email from Triban Investment LLC in support of the request, and they describe a bit more about the project. So I can read that later if you want, or you can read that at your leisure when you have a chance. As far as public improvements for this site, public utilities are available on both Brim and Newton. Newton Road has a 12-inch water line and an 8-inch sanitary sewer on the north side and a 27-inch storm sewer on the south side of the road. Brim Road has a 20-inch water line and an 18-inch sanitary sewer on the east side of the road and a ditch on the west side. Electric is available on the east side of Brim Road. There are currently not any sidewalks along Brim Road or Newton frontage. However, there is an existing stone trail that you may have noticed that goes to along Newton to the community center, and sidewalks would be required along Brim and Newton Road as part of any new development. The city is working on doing a shared use path. I don't know if you've read that in the paper with some of the ARPA funding. So that will be under design soon and be a great amenity for residential that is in the area now. And of course, hopefully into the future. As far as traffic, that would have to meet any type of requirement of the city's access management policies and guidelines. So we don't have that information yet, but that would be part of the actual review process of any type of new development. Again, adjacent zoning is reviewed. So to the west is M3 Business Park. That's currently undeveloped property. And then RC Recreational Conservation, they're basically city athletic fields. If you've been by there, you'll see a lot of soccer going on there. To the north is Plain Township, and that is zoned agricultural, and it's used agriculturally. To the east is zoned M2 General Industrial. That's currently, or I should say, they retired. It was BG Rental, which is now vacant, and then Binkelman, an industrial parts distributor. And then to the south is zoned M1 Light Industrial, which is called Vital. So as far as the recommendation for the staff report, we look at the 7 Bowling Green principles. We look at the future land use map, and then we look at the Bowling Green community intention statement that was within the land use plan. Normally we would look at the community action plan, but this is off the map, so I will not have that section in my report. So when you first look at section 1, the principles, we look at the highly livable urban form that creates and preserves a community. We felt that a majority of that character does meet that principle. Positive appealing first impressions. If you look over those goals, we also feel it meets that. We felt that it does meet a strong business base only because we desperately need workforce here, and that's really important to economic development across really Ohio. So housing does help attract people here and businesses, not just people. We also felt it meets a broad housing spectrum. Good neighborhoods and easy access to health and fitness. Again, talking about the shared use path, the community center, the several types of destinations that people could access there, even the school district, that would not be that far, especially with the shared use path. Looking at section 2, we focus on the future land use map. This does meet the future land use map. If you saw that map on page 11, it shows this area in kind of a fuzzy yellow, and it says suburban single-family residential with retail permissions. It also has a statement by the map that says the western half of Bowling Green, yellow, is low and moderate density residential and should remain a predominantly residential area, but with allowances for neighborhoods serving retail and commercial. So in summary, it supports the future land use plan, all the principles that I did review for you, basically 6 of the 7. It does support the actual intention statement of basically diverse community of residents, distinct family friendly, and neighborhoods that are walkable, safe, and vibrant. And then it fits the map, as I've already said. And then it allows for residential uses near several destinations, which I also talked about. Community center, definitely active opportunities there. I think if we all have children, you know, you probably spend a lot of time there at all the activities there, or just exercise, obviously. The parcels are close to the middle school and high school, especially with the shared use path. It's close to the fairgrounds and commercial uses along North Main Street as we continue that connectivity that we're really striving for here with Complete Streets. While there may be some concern with the transition from industrial uses, that's always a concern, of course, with any type of different uses like this. There's definitely ways to buffer those type of uses to make those softer. I would additionally add that the area is not fully developed, so there's still opportunities to the west and the north, especially to have future residential. You may recall too, back in, I think it was 2016 on Newton Road by the community center, the city changed that to institutional. It was agricultural, and it was for the benefit of having assisted living there. So again, adding some residential has really started to happen already around the community center, but obviously it didn't come to, unfortunately, development there, but it's still zoned institutional. Also, you all know that we're going through our zoning code and our new zoning map, and that's still in process. But if this were approved as R2, it would be reflected on the new map as R2. We checked with our legal counsel on that, and that is what they advised us. So I wanted you to be aware of that. I gave you several pictures of the site looking along Brim, looking along Newton in different directions. I showed you some 3D views using pictometry, again, so you could look at the whole site. And then I gave you, of course, a copy of the application, again, the aerial map, and I think that's it, unless you have questions.
Any questions for Heather about the staff report? No. Okay, well, let's move on in the process then. Next, we solicit testimony from the applicant. Katie, do you have anything to add? Yeah, come on up here. Make sure we get you on tape.
All right. Well, I want to provide just a little bit of context that explains how we got to this point. So you may or may not be aware that in 2021, Bowling Green Economic Development underwent an extensive strategic planning process. So that process involved community stakeholders, kind of a broad sample of community stakeholders, including, a lot of the Bowling Green Economic Development trustees and city staff. And that process resulted in an expanded set of strategic goals. In addition, City Council had a stated goal of updating their economic development section in their strategic plan. And they liked our process so well and felt like it was very representative of what the community's needs were. So they actually adopted the Bowling Green Economic Development Strategic Plan as the city's strategic plan for economic development. So the 4 goals that were stated then for both the city and Bowling Green Economic Development are sustained economic growth, infrastructure and utility development, encouraging innovation and entrepreneurship, and improving quality of life. And so after we had those 4 overarching goals, we had a very extensive process to then figure out, okay, how do we do those things? What are the current gaps in our community? How do we actually support all of those goals, and what are our current needs? So we broke those down into specific objectives. And one of those objectives was to increase the housing stock in Bowling Green. Every time that I've asked a realtor for the number of listings within the past 2 years, it's been under 10 and oftentimes less than 4. And so someone told me yesterday that there was 1 home listed. I don't, you might know if that's true or not, but
I do.
yeah. So myself and my board realized that we can't continue to effectively attract and retain industry, that sustained economic growth goal, without supporting the other community assets that make that possible. So once we recognized the need and determined that that was within our strategic goals to address it, we started looking for appropriate sites. And the property on the corner of Brim and Newton that we're proposing tonight, that you're voting on tonight, rose to the top of our list as a possibility for several reasons. The first is because Bowling Green Economic Development controlled the property. The second is that we had tried to market that property industrially for well over 20 years with no success. Third, the site is in proximity to the community center, many of the things that Heather already mentioned. It's adjacent to other property that could easily also become residential. And we've even had conversations with many of those property owners who have that interest. We would love to eventually see, lots of housing in that area, and maybe eventually some sort of connection to Cogan's Crossing. And it would be aligned with the new shared use path in that area, which would connect residents to many of our other key community assets. So at that point, once we had a site determined, we worked to recruit a developer to our community, and we had a few interested parties. We spent a lot of time interviewing each developer and conducting our due diligence. And so thankfully, we were able to reach an agreement with Trident Investments. You do have a letter from them expressing their stated interest in this project and commitment to move forward. They are a Cleveland area firm. They have a proven track record of success, and they have presented a clear plan for that site. They also have partnered with K. Hovnanian Homes, a national builder, to build out the entire subdivision. So both parties are confident that the project will be a tremendous success in that site. They're very aware of the surrounding uses. They've been out, they've evaluated everything, and they are confident in that site and in the possibilities. So preliminary designs have been prepared. Their original estimate was around 150 homes, but after redoing their designs a little bit, they're at about 130. And the starting price will be around $225,000. So upon a successful change in zoning, Trident will then submit plans to the planning department with the hopes of starting construction this summer. And I'm happy to answer any additional questions that you might have.
Any questions for Katie?
Katie, was there any discussion between Tri-Ban and surrounding correspondence regarding any concern?
Yes, actually, we actually have some of the surrounding businesses here with us tonight, and we've really appreciated some of those businesses engaged with us, specifically Vital, just to the south of the property engaged with us right away with a few just concerns about how, both parties can be successful right there as neighbors. And we were really grateful that they reached out because we immediately then went to the developer, let them know about some of the company's plans for expansion, some of what they'll have going on, some of the noise that will be created, some of those sorts of things. So we brought that to the developer immediately, who also then brought the home builder into the conversation. And then we've had both parties talking now for several weeks and coming up with a plan, making sure there's adequate mounding and trees so that there's kind of a barrier there. The company is directing sound a different way. So we've really been able to, reach some points of understanding, I guess, to be able to move forward. And everyone wants to be a good neighbor and be successful. So I think we have found a path for both parties to do that. Yes,
So, the starting price is $225,000, right?
around that range, yes.
How many houses will be?
About 130,
All of them will be of this price range? or-
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
that's good.
Is the initial phase, Katie, just involve building single-family residential units? I heard some talk at some point about perhaps condos or townhomes or something. Is that out in the future?
That is conversations with a different developer.
Okay.
So this project is all single
homes.
family. Yes. Any other questions?
Guess not. Thank you very much. Next is the opportunity for the public to weigh in with any comments they might have regarding this rezoning request. If you care to address us, you need to come up to the microphone, identify yourselves, and be glad to listen to whatever you have to say.
I'm Donald Chair. And the city has received this request to rezone acres of land on the west side of Brim, extending north from the north border of the old Wall Street Journal property to Kramer. While land for residential development is a documented need in Bowling Green, I speak to oppose the proposed change, permitting simply the construction of single residence families. Everyone informed about the cost single family housing knows that the affordable housing the city of Bowling Green is documented to need cannot be constructed at a price affordable to the very people for whom Bowling Green lacks housing. Contrarily, the general sort of affordable residence development requires the construction of townhouses, row houses, or low-rise apartments, complete with parking and common land available for community recreation, from games for families, including children, to healthy exercise for adults. Such neighborhood creating developments have responded to community demand for affordable housing from Chapel Hill, North Carolina to San Jose, California. And reputable developers have expressed interest in working here in Bowling Green. But since the market will not allow the present proposal to meet the city's known need for affordable housing, I believe the city's zoning commission should oppose the proposed rezoning as it stands.
Thank you for your comments, sir. Anyone else wish to address us this evening? Come on up and identify yourself.
Hi, I'm Julie Smith Maycask. I live just down the road from where the proposed housing development is going in. And while I do appreciate the need for housing, I'm glad to hear it's no longer 150 houses, but I have concerns how 130 are going to fit. Did they give any ideas as to lot size? Because in looking at and comparing it to the other areas where there is housing, just kind of overlooking, it doesn't appear that 130 houses are going to fit. So do you have any information on that? Mhm. Okay. And then I too have concerns, well, 225,000 is not a huge amount as some of the other houses you see. I do have concerns of whether or not that's going to be affordable for many people. So those are really my only comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. What's your address, by the way, just for the record?
847 Standish.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Anyone else? Okay, then I'll close the public hearing and it'll be time for the commission to discuss this matter among ourselves before we vote. So we've heard a couple of different opinions. I think everybody agrees that there is a need for more housing in Bowling Green. It strikes me that the starting price you're talking about, Ms. Thompson, the $225,000, and maybe might be what was $150,000 house 10 years ago. But we all know that the prices of building materials have gone up rapidly in the last couple of years. So 225,000 is not a particularly large or ornate house by any stretch of the imagination anymore. Did hear that the site has been empty and been tried to be sold over the last 20+ years unsuccessfully for industrial uses. So the decision of the city was to try to go in a different direction. Anybody want to express any particular thoughts? Yeah, Mark.
I'll make a
Go
couple
ahead.
comments. These will be in favor of the request. Your comments about pricing and what is considered to be a lower price or not high end is accurate. That today, what a family or a person could get for 225,000 is a lot different than it was 5 years ago. There's a massive gap in our market for moderately priced homes. And when I say moderately, those would be 200 to 250, 275. There's a massive gap in those homes that are priced like that. Katie's comments about the lack of inventory are dead on for 2.5, 3 years. In our real estate market, we're considered part of Northwest Ohio and part of the Toledo regional market. In the last 2 years, the single smallest market with the least amount of inventory is Bowling Green. Out of every community you can think of in Northwest Ohio, we have the least amount of inventory anybody. A huge part of that is the lack of new construction as well. There's other communities that have had more, so they sell more, they have more activity, and that has been tough on Bowling Green. I don't think we need any more $450,000 homes that are put up, but anything in that range of 225 to under 450 is an absolute need. So we've got some residential housing just to the south of that and across the street. Those houses, they do well to have some neighbors too. Right. So I'm in favor, and I think there are a lot of, I'm trying to speak the facts. I think there's a lot of facts that warrant approval of the request.
Okay, thank you. Anybody
Mark,
else?
I would agree with everything Mark you said. I do want to acknowledge a point that Donald made, that we do need cheaper, yes, well, I don't want to say cheaper.
Less expensive.
Less expensive, yeah, right, more affordable, right, terminology there. Housing of all varieties, and I think this does fit. It's not nothing's gonna be perfect and have everything that fits everybody. But don't we have, on South Main, some more apartments coming in?
Yes, we do.
Don't know
Yes.
if we necessarily have
Yes.
row housing in Bowling Green, or we have condos, but we need all varieties, and this is, I think, a nice piece for variety.
I think what you just said, Nate, is a good example of what we tried to do with the proposed zoning code. We had a huge gap between R2 single family zoning and multifamily zoning. And so even allowing a 2-unit dwelling was a way for us to have more balance in housing types here allowed. Because like I said, currently there's just that gap of, it's called often middle missing housing. That if our zoning code doesn't allow that, how can it be built? You know, it's kind of that conundrum that we really need to fix. So that's what I wanted to touch on when you were talking.
I know that the thoughts expressed about having housing at not the highest price points, but at less expensive housing available to people. The way I sort of think of it is, we all know Abbott's coming in a couple of years, and we're talking about employing 500
Yeah.
people right off the bat. Well, we'd like to have some housing available for those people that is within the affordability range for people that work on the manufacturing line, not just the plant manager and department head, but for the more average employee. I think as long as we don't get much beyond the 225,000 number, that probably is doable for a lot of families today. When you get to be as old as I am, you've seen a lot of inflation over the years. I remember when I bought my first house, the kind of house we'd like to have more of in Bowling Green, 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom, $30,000. My hand was shaking when I wrote the check. Those days are long gone. But I do think that what's a $225,000 house now might have been a $150,000 house 5 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's an aside here, but we're finding the same thing with talking about new school buildings within the district. A few years ago, we could have built an elementary school and a high school for $70 million. Now we're talking about building just a high school for about the same amount of money. Things have gotten a lot more expensive very recently.
And the longer we wait, the more expensive it's going to be.
I guess one of my concerns was how the neighbors felt out there, with whatever your name is now, I can't remember, sorry. But the fact that they're working together with them, I think, good. Glad to hear that. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully they can work together to come up with a satisfactory result. There are certainly things that can be done to lessen the effect of noise that might come from the Vitals operation in the old Wall Street Journal building. I see the letter from Triban. I read it quickly, but they say in there that they're quite confident they can handle that issue and come to a satisfactory result. Any other comments? All right, well then I'll make a motion that we approve the rezoning request for the 36.89 acres from M3 zoning to R2 single family residential zoning. And Jamie, call the
Can I,
I'll
one
second it.
clarification,
second,
that you recommend approval?
Recommend, yeah. I was
Yes,
gonna
just
say
wanna
we're
make
only
sure.
recommending.
recommend approval.
And I'll second
And
the
Judy seconded.
recommendation, yeah.
Right, seconded the recommendation. I think we're all set to vote then, Jamie?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 7-0. We've got one other item on tonight's agenda, involves the Cogan's Crossing development. And essentially, they had a preliminary plan that included a waiver that was approved a few years ago. But the time limitation to make use of that approval ran out, so they're asking us to basically approve the same thing that we did about 3 or 4 years ago. It's a preliminary plan with waiver request for Cogan's Crossing plats 9 through 14. Heather, you want to tell us about that?
Sure. I think you did a great job though, Bob, talking about it already. So since you last approved their preliminary plan, they actually came back to you with the final plat for plat 8. So that was approved. It's been divided and a couple lots have been sold. And so now, as I understand it, he'd like to move forward, but that preliminary plan approval is only good for 1 year and that's expired. So he's essentially asking for the same thing except for the modification of removing that plat 8 that was already approved. So you're looking at plats 9 through 14. So once that is approved, if it is approved tonight, then they could come back and do a construction drawing with the administrative staff. And then once that's done with any type of improvements, it would come back to you for approval of the final plat. So likely he would do it in phases as was done the last time he was in front of you. So I don't know if that helps, but essentially the waiver is the same as Bob said. It's for lots to exceed the width and depth ratio of 2.5 feet. So 2.5 times the width from the depth. And it's pretty much the same.
Okay, anybody have any questions for Heather about this?
And I do see the engineer in the audience if you'd like to ask him any questions.
Shane Huntley, I'm with Kleinfelder. I don't really have much to add. Like Heather said, this has all been approved. We honestly didn't change anything from the plan. But yeah, with COVID, I think it kind of threw a wrench in his original plans, and now he's looking to develop more.
Okay, any questions, gentlemen?
All right, thanks
Okay,
everyone.
thank you. All right, any discussion?
If we
Okay.
approved it once, we need to approve it again.
That would seem to be the case. Are we actually approving the plan, preliminary plan?
Yes, you have sole authority over subdivisions.
Well, I will then make a motion that we approve the preliminary plan with the waiver request for Cogan's Crossing plats 9 through 14.
I'll second it.
Second. Jamie, please call the roll.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, and 7-0 approved. That gets us down to the real reason we all came here tonight. So there's gonna be a report about Applebee's. We're
But
trying
not,
to tell you
yes.
what the zoning board
I-
wants to do.
I have to tell you that at the last board meeting, which was on March 8th, we only had one request for a variance, and that was Faith Elsa at 338 West Mary Avenue, requested a variance to allow the construction of a 6-foot tall fence in the 25-foot front yard setback. It's a corner lot. Fence would be in the front yard that faces West Mary Avenue, which would be 2 feet taller than the 4-foot maximum allowed. That request for the variance was granted unanimously. And now to the big news. Next Wednesday, you can see how excited we are. The zoning board members showed up tonight. I mean, that's how excited we are. We have 3. We are going to have a really exciting and active zoning board meeting. I won't bore you with the other 2, but the one that I'm sure has garnered the most interest is that Applebee's is coming to Bowling Green, and they have applied for a couple of variance requests. So anybody who want to come and have an interesting evening, and if you can remember, several of us that were on the original land use planning, that's all we heard was Applebee's. If Bowling Green could get an Applebee's, they would be better than New York City. So we've got them on the request for a variance. Come in next Wednesday night and see it. And that, Mr. Chairman, is my report.
Okay, thank you, Judy. The pressure will be on.
I guess.
Heather, do you have a report? from the
I
fire
actually am
department?
gonna review briefly the 2022 report. Okay, so we try to encompass the highlights of the planning department from 2022. And what we do first is compare zoning permits. So you'll see the category from last year of 2021 versus 2022, and it's broken down in residential first. So you'll see our permits were down quite a bit from 2021. We think there's some obvious reasons with inflation especially, and people did a lot during COVID, it seems like. So they might have kind of lost their desire to do more goals after spending all that money. And then commercial, that actually is down a bit too. And then industrial projects were up slightly. As far as institutional, those were actually down also. So overall, the total zoning permits issued for 2021 was 436, and then 361 permits for 2022. So what we do too is we give you a highlight of new home construction. So you can see a map of where the new construction of homes occurred, and then we list the addresses and then a couple examples of homes that were built, so you get an idea of the different areas. We also highlight commercial, what was built, whether it be additions, alterations, or changes in use. And then we throw in some pictures there to make it a little more interesting, hopefully for you. Again, we cover commercial, industrial, and institutional. So we did have some large institutional projects. They're still under construction, like Northwest Community Correction Center, very large addition, Wood County Juvenile Retention Center, and Wood County Justice Center. So Wood County definitely has a lot going on. Is for institutional. And then we review strictly new construction, again, commercial, industrial. Again, you've seen a lot of these because I try to give you your monthly report so you can stay up on what's going on. I do know Culver's is about wrapped up and ready to open, and that was approved last year. Caliber Collision, we're still working with them. And then All Size Storage. Industrial, we have Phoenix Technologies. You'll probably go by there on Fairview and notice that very large project. Along with Wood County Hospital was building with an innovative tech park. And then Klaus Construction has a new speculative industrial building over on Wooster. And we give you a list of permits for zoning compliance. So you can kind of see some new businesses there that came in town or had improvements on their existing structure. And then we look at the Zoning Board of Appeals and we look at their activities for 2021 versus 2022. You'll see that they did a lot more work in 2022 as far as requests. They had 31 requests compared to 26. So we basically had a meeting almost every month except August and September. And 27 of those were approved and 2 were denied and 1 was withdrawn for whatever reason. Planning Commission, you were about equal to 2021. You had 16 requests. So those range from ordinance revisions, subdivisions, rezonings, annexations, interim zoning, public construction, street alley vacations, master plan updates. We had several of those, Parks and Rec, economic development, and the bicycles facilities and destinations map. And then a new thing for 2022 was our historic local register and adding properties to that. So you'll see we did that 3 different times. Also, Historic Preservation Commission, you'll see, has been very busy. I won't read through all that, but I would say they made a lot of progress in 2022, or yes, with all their goals, and continue to have a lot to do. And code enforcement, we give you an idea of the different things that they review as far as cases, complaints, warnings, citations. We're still working with rental registration. You can see at this time last year, we had about 5,300 registered, and we're still almost complete with those. We also review downtown permits. So anything that happens on the sidewalks, so A-frame signs, outdoor dining, merchandise display, and the parklets all runs through the planning department. We also send new resident newsletters by watching the transfers in the newspaper weekly. So you can see we actually sent a lot more in 2022 than 2021. So we sent 271 of those this year, or 2022, compared to 205. So again, definitely a lot of houses. They probably sold as soon as the sign went up, I think. And then we give you an example of what those look like. Also, our office is in charge of addressing new properties or fixing addresses. So that is something that's really important because it's tied to the E911 system and the county addressing system. So again, it might seem like something that's kind of dull, but it's really, really important that we get that right and get it entered in our software. We also work with the Wood County Health District. So you'll see that we had about the same types of complaints, or the same number. So 61 in 2022, and last year was 67. And again, that's always something that we're working on with them every month. They forward us a report every month of complaints. And then we have a sanitarian that is supposed to respond within 24 hours, if it's not the weekend, obviously. And they also completed the 5-year exterior housing survey in 2021 and then presented that to City Council in May of last year. So that was really important data for us to have. And I think it's really neat to see the pictures in the report that show a before and after picture of the work they do that is proactive with the housing survey. And I know they made a lot of progress on the house at the bottom there on East Wooster Street that you may not have noticed, but it's a big yellow house. They made a lot of progress on that house that they had been working on for several years. So then we give you an update of the community action plan and implementation of the future land use plan. So again, the zoning code update has been a really big part of hitting a lot of the recommendations of those plans. We're hoping that's done here in a couple months or so, and that really will be, we think, a new tool to help basically implement those plans and the goals of that plan. Already mentioned that we updated economic development. We still work on the micro grant funding that was from the community action plan, along with ARPA funds that we've used a lot for housing improvements. It's been a very successful program. And we also, again, we have been updating the Parklet program that I already mentioned because, tweaks happen that first year and figuring out what's going to happen the next time they go up, which they'll be installed April, actually. And then I give you a list of all the other highlights of the planning department that are more miscellaneous, we're the Census Bureau contact for the city. We work with FEMA. We pretty much do it all. I love in regards to land use. So I just wanted to mention that. And we do a lot of webinars and training. That's really important. And then I look at here a review community development. And again, I already mentioned that those programs have been very successful with ARPA funding. And we also have what I think is kind of some fun maps that you can see where the improvements are going to, that additional help for the programs. We have a housing repair and rehabilitation program. We have the housing revolving loan fund program. We have BG Transit that gives rides to individuals. And then we have the different programs with Salvation Army where we provide transient housing for people. And then the next one is CDBG monies, how they're spent, and ARPA housing projects that were completed. What's kind of confusing is it doesn't go calendar year. It basically starts from, the CDBG starts from September 1st until the end of August. Now, the ARPA funding, we can do calendar year because that's not regulated by the federal government. So that's why those dates don't line up. But you can see, we do anything from furnaces, roof replacements, windows, water heaters, really important things that make someone's home a home. So we just really are very proud of those programs. And again, I gave you a map of where the repairs have occurred, and you'll see they're all over town. So they're not really concentrated in a certain area. And then I give you a before and after picture of a house that was repaired with windows, roofing, and siding with ARPA funding. So it's kind of cool, I think, again, to see that improvement. So then the next chart really is just an update using the community action plan, using the future land use plan, and all those recommendations and where we're at on those recommendations. And you'll see a lot of them are zoning code. So like I said, once that's done, it'll really help with a lot of those recommendations. So I think that's it, unless you have any specific questions, or feel free to call or email me if you review it later and have any questions.
Heather, I think this report is almost unbelievable for a virtual two-person department. You do an outstanding job, and I'm tired just reading it, so I can't imagine doing it.
Thank you.
Thank
Well,
you.
technically, there's 3 of us, and we really appreciate
Well,
that. So-
yes. I
And
forgot.
we do have community development now. So really, there's 6 of us, 3 in community development, and then we all work together.
That's still an
and then
awful lot
planning
of
it, right?
work for a very small department. So
Well,
thank
we
you.
enjoy
Thank
it.
you
We
both of
appreciate you all being here and helping us.
Well, I think we could all agree, we voted, it'd be a 7-0 vote again,
Yeah.
but there's an awful lot of activity that goes on in the department that people aren't aware of on a day-to-day
Right.
basis. But very nice summary of.
That's a great summary.
Heather, can
Yes,
can we go back to page 15?
Sure.
And in the top left, you highlight the housing repair and rehabilitation projects
Yes.
and said that we roughly spent $193,000 on those. How much money is available to spend on those types of projects, or is it unlimited?
It's not unlimited, no. So we actually have to put out an annual plan
Yep.
that the federal government gives us X amount of dollars every year. We try to anticipate what those dollars are, but we don't know until a certain date. And so our plan says we're going to spend X amount on housing repair and rehabilitation. We're going to spend X amount on the housing revolving loan fund or rental property or whatever the different categories are. So that's probably a long-winded answer, but we don't necessarily know.
It's not.
We have
I
a
guess where I'm
estimate.
trying to go is, like, were there a lot of funds that were still available that didn't get used? And can we do a better job of getting the word out so people can potentially take advantage?
Absolutely not. We are inundated with
always-
applicants,
okay.
which is a great problem to have.
Yeah.
And that's part of why the mayor allocated or the city council allocated additional monies from ARPA to do more houses, more housing rehab, because it's a great tool.
Because there's a demand and your
Yes.
office is getting requests.
Yes.
Good.
Yes, we are inundated. We have so many applications that, we're hoping we can fund them all, but it's going to be very tight.
That's good to know.
And that's within the next 3 years at $100,000 a year.
Okay.
So.
Thanks.
Okay, anything else for the good of the order this evening? And there's a motion to adjourn,
So moved.
second,
Second.
and just ordered 7 to